tuve una caída en mi carrera, pero he vuelto más fuerte que nunca.
Ojo con Supa, va a reventar a Marlon. Se atreve ahora con el 1 contra 1 contra FLICKR. No debería de ganar el tetón.
J'ai progressé une étape à la fois jusqu'à arriver au sommet.
Maintenant qui est dans la mêlée. Et la côte de Roguette, elle est magnifique du côté d'ADC.
Ich weiß, ich kann der Beste sein. Jetzt muss ich es nur allen zeigen.
선택할 수 있는 길이 많았습니다. 저는 지금 걷고 있는 길이 옳다고 확신합니다.
No akcje tutaj na gotowe. Nie odbierajmy. Pentakill jak najbardziej zasłużony.
Orada sıfır bir değişim. Ayakta kalan son isim Erdemir.
Uzun zamandır bekliyordum. Şimdi benim zamanım.
Hello and welcome to day 3 of the group stage of the EMEA Masters. I am Medic, and once again, I am joined by the solo queue extraordinaire, the proficient Lee Sin player. I don't know, other great words to talk about. How you doing, Vroxa? How are you doing today? You good?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here casting with you, the one and only Rakan legend himself. And yeah, it was fun being with you on Tuesday, so now I'm excited for round 2.
Well, we're back as the Thursday Bros today. We are going to have a quick look at what happened yesterday. Obviously, the start of Group C and Group D, and what a day it was for the EMEA Masters. We saw FUT top the table in Group B, LDLC continuing the LFL's dominant performance as well, and eSuper, although they weren't able to pick up any wins, did give us some very close games, Boxer.
Yeah, I think overall it's really exciting watching all these groups right now. I feel like all of them are pretty explosive in the sense that so many things can happen. We saw in Group B every other team than Aegis had luck on their side, so to speak. All the other 3 teams picking up 2 victories. LDLC, like you mentioned, to no surprise, looking great on the first day. And all in all, groups where, you know, 3 teams are still battling for the throne on both sides. Although I still want to argue that it is possible to go 0-3 and still make it out. You may need a bit of luck on your side, but it is possible.
Yeah, a lot of luck, and the other teams to not play as well as perhaps they have done so far. We'll see if some of those teams can bounce back from being 0-3. Obviously, Aegis and eSuper sitting at the bottom of the charts in C and D. LDLC, though, really impressed once again. You know, looking for another EMEA Masters title, almost said EU Masters title there, but they continue to be, just the LFL generally, I think, continues to be this development zone for European players, and it feels like it's just this never-ending well of European talent that rises up through France.
Yeah, for sure. LDLC is one team, Team Go, that we're going to be casting and talking about later today is another who's also 3-0 in their group right now. And I think, if I remember correctly, back in my young days, so to speak, like 2016-17, when I was looking to become a pro player, the Spanish league was where many wanted to go, but that has kind of shifted throughout the years. Obviously, LVP is also really strong, but the LFL teams are looking real good and have been for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think it helps when, you know, Carmine Corp took 3 titles in a row, LDLC took another title. Like, the history of the EMEA Masters or the EU Masters over the last couple of years has been French dominance. It's just consistently they're up near the top of the table. I think a few people this year would have been a bit surprised to see Aegis sitting near the bottom, but obviously LDLC and Team Go really doing the LFL proud. On the other hand, we see teams like FUT actually starting to step up as well in their group. Obviously, there's a lot of teams in Group B at 2 and 1, as you said, Mako, Movistar, and FUT all near the top there. But tomorrow we'll get to see exactly how that group ends up playing out, because only 2 of those teams can make it through to our quarterfinals.
Yeah, very excited to see what's going to happen. I think in Group B in particular, A lot of people are going to be expecting movie star riders to come out as the favorites. A lot of people have probably also expected the Aegis to be able to fight for the throne at the top. But anything can happen in EMEA Masters, and Foot and Marco, like you mentioned, both looking great. So we'll see how it all plays out. Impossible to predict, really.
And it makes me very excited for the quarterfinals as well, obviously coming in next week. Best of 5 all the way up towards our finals. For the moment though, today we will be focusing on Group A and Group D. You can see A, obviously, 3-way tie between Wildcats, Heretics, Geek for those top 2 spots, whereas Group D is kind of Team Go, and then everyone else is trying to chase them. I think Anorthosis, I'm trying to get that name pronounced correctly. Apparently, you put the emphasis on the first O, so it's Anorthosis Famagusta. Will be looking, actually, probably licking their lips, looking at the rest of the games today, because if they can pick up a couple of wins versus Riddle and SK Prime, they can actually put themselves in one of those quarterfinal berths.
Well, it's actually pretty beautiful watching this group because it's so open, anything can happen. Obviously, Go have been literally stomping anyone coming their way in every single way possible. Like, they're looking so dominant. But the 3 other teams are just beating each other left, right, and center. And that means that now that we're about to watch these games, I have no clue what to predict. It's a fully open group, really. All right, Medic is having a little technical issue. I'm going to be taking over for a moment. Oh, welcome back, Medic. Right here.
Apologies,
on the screen, of course. You can see the schedule for the day.
Yes, you can. We're going to start off with Anorthosis Famagusta versus Riddle, then Go, SK Prime, and then Anorthosis Famagusta again versus Team Go. The rest of that group will be played off stream, and we will switch over to Group Group A to round out the day. For any of you that do vMix calls for production purposes, perhaps don't have the back button bound to one of your mouse buttons, because when you grab your mouse, you might accidentally press it and leave the call. Just a tip, word of advice. I don't know, anecdotal evidence is what we'll call that, Mads. And any games here that you're super excited to see?
I thought that was like a complete random example.
Oh yeah, totally random. Definitely haven't done that myself.
Well, personally, I am looking forward to seeing Go versus SK Prime in particular, because Go has been so dominant so far, but I also think SK Gaming Prime have shown signs of brilliance. They've been really inconsistent, but if they're having a good game, a good day, I could easily see them actually, showing up for battle.
I see that as well. It'll be really interesting to see exactly how well they can perform. Obviously, taking a game off Team Go would be super impactful for that group. And this is the group we will start off the day with. Go, as we said, up at 3-0. Riddle, Anorthosis Famagusta, and SK Gaming Prime bringing up the rear. And for Anorthosis Famagusta, it's a big start to the day. We see them in our first game up against Riddle. Last time they played, Riddle pretty much dismantled the Greek representatives. It was a relatively one-sided affair. And so I think today the question is, was that just a draft difference? Was it just an early play difference? Or was it actually a stylistic difference that really cost the Anorthosis Famagusta lineup?
It's hard to say, right? Because their most recent game against SK Gaming Prime started out a little shaky, just like the rest. They do not look like a good early game team so far, but they looked so dominant as a team. Spooky in particular was a standout player, but all of them really were just so clean as a team, as a unit. And if they can bring that same level while cleaning up their early games a little bit, they could be a real competitor in this group.
I think that's the thing, right? Like, they're very strong at team fights. I really enjoyed HawHaw's Cho'Gath as well. I think it was an inventive pick that allowed them a lot of pressure in that mid lane. Alongside that, obviously, Eyliph's Gragas. But if you can get to team fights, as Anorthosis Famagusta, you can definitely win against any of the teams in this group. Obviously, Go perhaps a little bit, an echelon above, but on a good day, I think any of these teams could take a game off Go. It's just surviving the early game, surviving the pressure that some of these other teams can apply to you, and making sure you're not 5,000, 8,000 goal behind when you're getting up towards that 20-minute mark.
Yeah, and that's really the thing. That's what it's all about now for these teams. Obviously, from a draft perspective, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, finding the balance between getting strong early game champions that they're comfortable with so they can survive the first 15 minutes, but also being able to take control and win when the late game team fights come around.
And obviously on the other side of the rift, it is Team Riddle coming over from the NLC. Winter 7, previously Johan, played for HawHaw Life in the LCK a couple of years ago. And Banderas had a really strong performance on this side. I remember actually it was just the solo kill where Janax really disrespects the power of the Lumberjack line. But what I loved about Riddle was again, their cohesion. It felt very much like when they got towards these team fights, they were very much on the same page, and they drafted compositions to allow them to execute that as well. You look at things like Sion, Rakan, and Cylon, Nautilus, and Wukong together. It just gives you that go button. It gives you that all in. It makes it so much easier for you to play the fight.
Yeah, and unlike Anorthosis on the other side, Riddle actually have showed a pretty impressive early game for the most part. They're not like super clean, it's not perfect, but they've been able to keep up with all these teams in the early game, and especially in mid and bot, they have very, very strong carries who can definitely shine and make a difference in those late game team fights.
We'll see if they're able to make a difference in our first game of the day. We should be getting ready for Champion Select. 13.6 is the patch we're on. I know that the bot in chat, when you can type !patch, does often show 13.4. So if anyone comes in and asks that in Twitch chat, make sure you correct them, because we're on 13.6, which is one away from solo queue. 13.7 is what solo queue's on at the moment. So let's jump into it. Broxer, oh dear, I'm gonna struggle with this name so much today because I'm so in my head it's Anorthosis, but it's Anorthosis. Anyway, Famagusta on the blue side, Riddle on the red, Lee Sin and Zaya taken away. There's a Zillion ban as well. No real surprises as of yet.
Yeah, so far the Zillion has been getting permabanned against the Greek side. They're just too good with the Zillion, so it makes sense for them to take it away. Lee Sin, Saya also target bans, and that's what we're going to see for the most part, especially at this point in the group stage where everything is on the line. It's all about comfort, about getting something you know you can play with under pressure, and that's what both teams are really denying from their opponents at the moment.
Yeah, no real surprise that we see the Viego ban there as well. You talked about comfort. Winter 7 on the Viego has been really good. Spooky actually had a good game on it as well. So it's kind of we don't want you to take this, even though it means that we're going to cost ourselves one of our stronger picks. But it means that we have the meta support, meta jungler still available. Vi, one of those has now been removed, but Sejuani Maokai still very much available. There's the Gragas instead. A flexible pick for Anorthosis Famagusta, but expect that to go to Eyliph in the top lane.
Yeah, it's always, nice seeing teams picking the Gragas in the early game because it gives you so much flexibility in draft, which can otherwise be pretty tricky to draft on blue side when, you get counterpicked in every scenario. Riddle taking Aphelios and Wukong makes a lot of sense. Now, if we are to look at the jungle role in particular, we're going to need to see a Wukong or a Maokai, maybe a Sejuani. A Sejuani or a Maokai into the Wukong for the jungle to be evenly matched. They decide not to pick jungle yet, which is telling me that Spooky has something spicy prepared. Because now there's already so many junglers off the table, right? Lee is banned, Viego and Vi are banned, Wukong is picked away. So we'll see what he brings. Now, on the other hand, a Kai'Sa and a Pyke lane ready.
Yeah,
it's spicy. How do you feel about this one?
Well, I'm quickly looking through some of the stats here for iLevi. He has played Pyke a few times over this season, 2 and 1 on it. It's his 3rd most played across the course of his career. So very experienced on it. Kai'Sa Pyke, huge kill threat, right? Like, especially with Halo Blades, you can get so much damage down. I do like the Braum pick into it because putting up the Unbreakable gives you a little bit more safety, but expect to see flashes burn at level 1 down towards that bottom lane. Get Banderas and Jinjo in a sticky situation, and you could do a lot of work for Anorthosis.
Yeah, definitely. Now we're gonna have to see how Riddle decides to approach the blind pick. Gragas takes Kai'Sa for themselves, which makes a lot of sense. You can see Anorthosis on the Greek side decided to ban away on Cyan, trying to get rid of the tanks. Unfortunately for them, Kai'Sa was still available and you can't get rid of them all. And they're gonna have to make a decision now. Where's the Gragas gonna go? Who's going to be taking it? Are they comfortable sending Eyliph on Gragas into Kai'Sa, or do they take the counter pick like a Gwen?
It looks like it is going to be the Gwen, so Spooky likely to take this Gragas. Could, of course, actually still go into the mid lane. I keep thinking of Gragas as the jungle flex, but mid lane flex is actually more common these days. So it could be HawHaw playing mid lane Gragas. He does like those AP tanks, and it means you could play a heavy AD jungler here if you wanted to mix up your damage profile. Could, of course, go AD mid, Jace. Something that pops into my head, but hasn't been picked here. Instead, the Jarvan likely going into the jungle. So a little bit magic damage favored up towards the top side for Anorthosis Famagusta, but with the Jarvan, you kind of balance that out, especially if you go for the gore drinker early on.
Interesting choice as well, because it's actually going to be HawHaw's first time playing Gragas this split, really, both including in the regional league as well as EU Masters. Spooky has 2 games in Jarvan previously, 2 wins, 1 loss, so it's comfort for him. I think the LeBlanc pick is really interesting because you can have a lot of pressure with LeBlanc, and FireRain has already showed us in Riddle's 1 win that he's able to dominate on that pick. But Gragas is not really the easiest target to take down in the mid lane. You know, you pick an assassin into what is a very fluffy mage in Gragas. I expect LeBlanc to have a lot of pressure in the early game, however, and HawHaw is just going to want to, you know, slowly scale up, get his rod of ages, get things going, and then eventually it's going to be very easy for him to contest LeBlanc.
It does also have okay wave clear in the early game, Gragas. Like you can body stand, put your Q down. It doesn't clear the wave early on, but it does, you know, chunk it out quite a lot. And something that LeBlanc can struggle with is actually pushing the wave early on because her W doesn't do enough damage. She was buffed on 13.6, I want to say. It was either 13.6 or 13.5, where they gave her Q the Annie treatment, I'd call it. Basically, if you kill a minion with it, you get the mana back. And cooldown is reduced a little bit, I believe, as well. So gives LeBlanc a little bit more, but still not the strongest early game wave pusher. For both these teams, though, an incredibly important game. Both of them sitting at 1 and 2. Riddle, the NLC representatives, the first seed coming out from that region, and they're looking to, you know, carry that pride through the rest of today. Anorthosis Famagusta knocked out the GLL first seed. They knocked out the team that beat them in the finals in play-ins, and now are looking to make it to the bracket stage, to our quarterfinals. Would be a huge accomplishment for them if they can do it, but right now Riddle stand in their way.
And I am very curious to see how this one plays out, because the last time these two teams met, it did not look pretty. It was a stomp for Riddle, and we're gonna need to see a good start for Anorthosis here, because early game really hasn't been their strong suit. Every game they've played so far, it's been a disaster. They've fallen really behind early on, but now they've had a day to kind of recover, to think about how to approach the early game, and hopefully will show a little bit more stability in the game plan they bring.
Just try and keep things a little bit more even-keeled in the early game. Talk to me a little bit about how you expect these compositions to bounce against each other, though, Broxer, because if I look at Anorthosis Famagusta, I see a lot of aggression from their bottom lane, and Jarvan obviously known for a powerful early ganking jungler, whereas for Riddle, I look more at, you know, Aphelios, and I think, well, kind of just wants to scale. LeBlanc, a huge threat in the mid game, but not too powerful before she gets towards her first item. How do you think these two comps are going to play against each other?
So I think Riddle has gone for the safe traditional League of Legends team comp, where you have a standard bot lane with a hyper carry and a Braum. You have the Wukong, the scaling jungler. You have a tank in the top lane, and then you have your mage in mid. Whereas on the other side, we have a lot of playmaking. I'm gonna say it's more of a high-risk comp because champions like Pyke, like Jarvan, like Gwen can give a big payoff if you're able to find openings in the early game and get a lead. But if they fall slightly behind versus Riddle's team comp, it's gonna be so hard for them to survive, really, because they want to get to a point where, you know, they can look for picks, they can set up vision, control certain areas around objectives. Maybe Gwen can go split push in the side lane, and if that flexibility doesn't exist, it's gonna be very, very hard to execute. So eyes on the early game here. I'm gonna expect Anorthosis to try to find early openings and find a way to push the game forward, versus a Riddle that's happy to sit back and scale. And we'll see how everything goes. So far, both of the two junglers having completely standard early game clears. Both of them starting on the red side jungle, pathing towards the blue side. Full clears really for both. Crabs are gonna be spawning soon, and once the crabs are done, they're gonna see if there's any early ganks available. If not, they're just gonna be taking a base. The map is gonna reset, and then we'll see what comes next. But
It's kind of paint by numbers League of Legends, isn't it? If you're just following the guide that you get as a jungler, you know, the little one that you can turn off and keep on for new junglers, they're just doing that. It's like, okay, it says #1 here. I'm gonna start over here. I'll do my, you know, blue buff, red buff, and then I'll move over towards the other side of the map, and then Scuttle Crab. But now, Boxer, the numbers have disappeared. Now it's all expressionism. Now it's a Jackson Pollock on Summoner's Rift, as we see where these junglers decide to splat their paint across the screens. Winter went for the bot side. Scuttle Crab placed a ward in here and will just back away. You can see Spooky on his way down towards the bottom lane as well. Levi did spot them, but that sweeper a little bit too late, and Levi a little bit too late to get there to stop the recalls coming out from Kibah and Jinjo.
And now, with the jungle paths the two junglers have chosen, they're naturally going to be pathing in the same way. We're going to see Spooky pathing towards top side, Winter pathing towards bot side, and one of them could break the cycle of just full clearing from one side to the other. Drake is spawning here in 30 seconds, and that's going to be the objective that both teams are going to want to play for. Worth noting that iLevi still hasn't based as the only person in the bot lane, which would indicate to me that Anorthosis are not going to try to go for Dragon yet. Jarvan should be pathing up towards top side, and later when Pyke returns, they can look for control. Actually, we see iLevi deciding to stay. They want to get the control already now. Base doesn't matter on the support. And Spooky is now looking for a gank. Doesn't realize that Winter 7 warded the Tribush before basing, and now is sitting in lane with Riddle having full knowledge of what he's doing.
Yep. Only benefit for Anorthosis Famagusta here is that the wave is pushing in, right? So Jinjo and Kibah might have to step up, as these ranged minions will do quite a lot of work and keep that wave pushing forward. Winter 7 coming across. Jinjo's gonna flash away. Spooky already in the midst of them as iLevi dashes forward, but Spooky just caught unawares. First blood to Riddle. And even with the minions on their side, Anorthosis Famagusta weren't able to find anything, and Riddle pounced in the bottom lane.
And that was simply just a good read by Riddle, really. Winter 7 putting down that wards in the Tribush before basing, essentially leading to that kill. But I would also say a mistake by Spooky, because on his first base, he didn't swap to Sweeper. He has a Trinket ward still available. If he had that Sweeper, he could have made sure to sweep, try, seize the ward, and then he can, you know, change up his plan. They're not aware that Riddle has a ward, end up brute forcing the gank. Worth keeping an eye on the mid laners on the mid-map in this scenario as well, where HawHaw was trying to move down to the bot lane, but FireRain was following. And there was simply no real advantage.
FireRain was knocked back there for a second, but can just dash away on the LeBlanc. You see HawHaw trying to do something, but it's huge advantage for Riddle right now, isn't it? 700 gold lead. Kibah getting forced away here. Levi going low, though. Concussive blows, gets the stun. Jinjo! Ooh. Not quite enough damage with the Infernum proc. iLevi will heal himself up, but look who's on his way down towards the bottom lane. It was Winter 7. Just places another ward. Now back away. iLevi might look for the hook here. He's waiting on it. Who's it gonna hit? Hits onto Jinjo. Pretty tanky. Ghost Water dive away means that now Jinjo tries to turn it back around onto Golden Toast, and Crescendum Severum are not the guns you want to fight into if you're Anorthosis Famagusta. It's just such an easy position for Riddle to be in. They scale incredibly well. Their jungler has been reading Spooky very well as well. Winter 7 now coming across will clear this ward. Spooky is in the vicinity, has that Cataclysm, but flash still available for Kibah, even if he's caught out. Winter 7 able to dodge away. Kibah low, the heal comes out. and iLevi really hasn't been able to find enough out of these hooks as of yet. Getting up towards that level 6 though, you can see he is halfway there on that sidebar.
And so far, really impressive jungle pathing and predictions from Windows 7. He's had knowledge of where Spooky has been the entire game and always been one step ahead, making sure that his team has cover by him, that there's always a ward available, and that makes it very difficult for Spooky to look for early plays.
Oh, this is nice from Spooky though. Jinjo has no flash, no exhaust. Spooky just makes him into a ghost. Go join Casper. Forces him back to base. He's at the fountain for the next 10 seconds or so, and a plate goes over to Anorthosis Famagusta.
And that was a little bit of a strange play that we saw there from Riddle. The reason that play was even available was that Kibah and Windows 7 both based on Wukong and Braum. For some reason, Aphelios decided to stick around on his own. And now, again, because they didn't base as a team, because they're not coordinated, Braum is the next one sitting alone on the turret, getting caught on his own.
Yeah, it's really weird that they decided to play out this way. In the end, Winter 7 is able to get one in response, but yeah, it felt like Riddle were in a really good spot, and then they kind of just, I don't want to say donated a couple of kills, because obviously Anorthosis Famagusta had to play it well to get the kills, but feels like perhaps a few nerves there, a bit of a misread of the map. Levi still hasn't reset, by the way. He's still just sitting on his support item. At level 6, 9 minutes into the game, this guy hasn't gone back to base. He's doing like some sort of ultimate bravery challenge where you're not allowed to reset unless you die. It's not ARAM rules, man. He's gonna go back now, but he's backing and Spooky's backing. And now, okay, Spooky stops his base because he realizes, well, and Levi stops his base. So the reason you do this is because you can't leave Golden Toast underneath the tower by himself. Right? If you do, Winter 7 comes across and Golden Toast dies. So they wait for the wave to get pushed in. They wait for the wave to get pushed in. Jinjo. Exactly, right? Like, it's exactly what just happened to them. So, like, well, we can't have this happen. But now they're going to give up another play. iLevi's finally based, got himself a serrated Dirk in the boots. But Spooky has wasted, like, a minute and a half just hanging around this bottom lane. Golden Toast isn't even getting the farm. They're going to lose 4 plates if Riddle are able to get a couple more auto attacks in. At the moment, it's only 3. But it's just such a prolonged battle in this bottom lane where neither of the teams were really willing just to step back and reevaluate the play.
My jungle brain was getting so stressed out witnessing this on my screen. And the thing is, we were mostly looking at the bot lane, right? But the reason that this was possible, the reason that Spooky had to stick around for so long and iLevi couldn't really base, was that FireRain in the meantime had actually secured mid prior for himself. So he was constantly pushing HawHaw on the turret, hovering down towards bot lane, meaning if Golden Toast was left alone, he would have ended up the same way as Jinjo, just died on his own without any counterplay. Obviously, they were able to prevent that Kai'Sa from dying, but still lost most plates in the bot turret, and now all of a sudden, this Aphelios is sitting on a Kraken Slayer. He's very strong, and we can expect Windows 7 to soon path down and play around him again. Worth noting that at this point in the game, Rift Herald is up. It's actually been up for a long time, but no teams have had the opportunity to think about it because they've been chilling bot lane.
Are you saying a position in the map exists above the mid lane? Because I'm not sure that's true, Proxer. I've been watching this game for 11 minutes now, and I don't think we've looked at the top side of the map once. And Spooky now, oh, he's realized there's this magical gift of a Herald towards the top lane, spotted on a ward.
Yeah, look at the vision though. They know where Spooky is at every single point of this game. There hasn't been a single moment where they were not aware of his position. Maybe except the one time where he killed Jinjo and they didn't base as a unit on bot lane. But they've been doing such a good job tracking this Jarvan, which I think is really key, because Jarvan is a very strong early game jungler. He has a lot of creativity with his pathing, because it's easy for him to hop over walls at level 6. If someone doesn't have a flash available, they're, you know, very likely gonna die to his ganks. So being able to track him in this way has been very beneficial, and Windows 7 on the other side on the Wukong is scaling very, very well. And now with Divine Sunderer available, usually I like to say that when a Wukong has Divine Sunderer, he's literally a raid boss. Like, this champion is so strong with this item. This is the point they're at now. And sure, they ended up giving Herald But I don't think they really care because they are power spiking across the board. Everyone has a mythic except Braum. He's living the support life, has boots and a stopwatch. No gold for him. But as long as they are able to match Boogie and they don't secure a big herald play, having these 2 dragons and all the power spikes will make a big difference.
Well, Braum will be pretty happy because he just got a gold infusion, 300 extra gold into his pockets as we saw Levi trying to do some fancy feat. The problem for Levi is obviously Aphelios Braum really strong because the concussive blows is really easy to proc as the Aphelios. So the Braum passive, you need 4 auto attacks to get the stun off. But Aphelios just presses his red gun Q and it's like, okay, cool, it just counts. So you get the stun off really quickly, and you could see Levi trying to dodge around it, but it couldn't get out in time. And it's just a struggle in the bottom lane for iLevi.
If you were the support, would you have auto-attacked and taken that kill medic?
Yes.
I'm just gonna let you sit in silence for a moment while we're all judging you.
It's fine. You'd take it as a jungler, wouldn't you? Everyone tells me support's OP.
I'm the jungler, that's different.
Everyone tells me support's OP. If support's so OP, I should get the gold so I can be even more OP. Banderas, though, going to struggle because look at this. The support is in the top lane. And this is the issue, you know. Levi can start roaming around the map. Banderas going to try and get out with the all-out. They're tanking the tower. Eyliph gets the kill. The Rift Herald there as well to help out with their charge. They got 4 plates out of this, and they will get first tower to boot. Huge gold infusion for Anorthosis Famagusta. They were about 1,000 gold behind a couple of seconds ago, and now they have evened it out to about a 500 gold lead. Winter looking for the mid lane. Flash away from HawHaw. He'll be able to escape. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, Jinjo will take the first tower that Riddle have managed to get on the scoreboard. So actually, across the course of all of that, I think it's still relatively even between these 2 teams.
And now we finally saw a pathing mistake from Winter 7. He knew that there was about 30 seconds for the Herald to run out. He should know that he has to match this Jarvan, because if he doesn't, stuff like this can happen. And now, with plates about to time out, you know, we see a huge play happening for Anorthosis' side. They are getting so many resources on the Gwen. It's going to be very hard for Cassandra to deal with her at this point, and this could easily have been prevented if Winter 7 had kept an eye on Jarvan for another 30 seconds. Now, that didn't happen, and...
You're saying it's jungle diff?
Actually, in this case, yeah, I'm going to say jungle diff. You're not going to hear me saying that too often, but in that particular scenario, sure. And now, for the first time in the group stage, we are seeing the GLL team with an advantage at 15 minutes. That's right, for once they're actually ahead. This is not a situation we've seen them in yet, and I'm very curious to see how it plays out and how they're going to utilize the advantage. Now again, as we mentioned going into the game, team fights can be a little bit tricky for them at some point, because traditionally champions like Cassandra and Braum, even Aphelios, Wukong, they have a high chance of having a bigger impact in fights than their counterparts, but Anorthosis do have outplay potential. It's all about playmaking and execution. And if they can, you know, find some outplays in fights, they can still, you know, take down the opposition.
Alongside that, the side lane threat that Eyliph can provide on this Gwen, on the Gragas, in Anorthosis Famagusta's win against SK Prime, he had some incredibly impactful teamfight ultimates. He kept finding Kedweak and catching him out. Now we'll see how he can deal with FireRain, who is the second most fed member of Riddle, purely through farm. I think Jinjo probably has the most gold on Riddle right now, but FireRain already finished that Ludens and the needlessly large rod, so can be a bit of a menace if left to his own devices. For the moment, though, it looks like Winter 7 is going to try and deal with Golden Toast and iLevi in the mid lane. 45 seconds on the 3rd dragon of the game for Riddle. You can see them already trying to set up around this. Actually looks like Kibah needs to back, get that warding totem, or sorry, not warding totem, the upgraded, oh, what are they called? Steel shoulder guards? That the relic shield? I can't see. My monitor is not good enough to let me see exactly which support item he went, because I think it's the, is it Steel Shoulder Guards upgrade?
It's the Shoulder Guards upgrade.
Yeah, it's the Shoulder Guards upgrade. Okay, cool. Sorry, pixelation a little bit tricky at times on these online streams. I've been blessed with, you know, 4K monitors at the LEC for too long, Boxer. Sometimes it's good to get back to your roots.
of course. Feels like the good old days, doesn't it? Well, now the dragon is up. We're seeing Riddle starting to fight for control in the river, clearing out most of the vision that has been placed. And it's going to be pretty difficult to stop Riddle from taking this dragon, to beat them in a fight once they actually get the setup, because when this team comp is grouped, it is so monstrous, and powering through Wukong, Kai'Sa, it's going to take much longer than it will be to kill a Gwen and a Gordring a Jarvan. The control has been set, they've pushed out the mid wave, still respecting the Pyke was able to move over the wall, going safe way, and what Riddle needs to do now to secure this objective is basically group and play as a unit. LeBlanc is going to look to find openings on the side lane, try to, you know, sneak some damage in on the enemy backline. Aphelios just wants to hit whatever is in front of him, but we can see Jarvan below the pit looking for an opening with Eyliph, seeing if they can get onto the Aphelios and shut him down.
Yeah, Spooky and Eyliph looking for something here. Jinjo pops the Q. Jarvan actually smites away the Drake there, stolen in the middle of the pit, and now Winter 7 going in with a Cyclone down towards the bottom side. Eylif's going to dash away. Banderas trying to get in as well, but HawHaw, a beautiful knockback by HawHaw, and Golden Toast has all the time in the world to open up, but Winter 7 still doing the damage. Golden Toast rooted up by FireRain in the middle of them all. Banderas is trying to survive. They get 2, and somehow Riddle are coming out on top in the fight. Eyliph and HawHaw trying to do what they can. They've already got the Drake for their team. FireRain can look for a little bit more snip from Eyliph, but unable to find his mark onto the LeBlanc, who dodges back, dodges forward. HawHaw down to 500 HP, flash forward for the change. FireRain using the passive, dodges away. Eyliph can look for a little bit more, but with no needlework, no ultimate to chase, and the LeBlanc gets away scot-free.
And I have to say, I really like what Spook and Eyliph were doing there in that scenario, because they know they're gonna have to find a flank. If they don't, there's no way they're ever gonna reach Aphelios and win a fight. So we see them splitting from their team, looking for the flank at bot side. Spooky is able to walk towards the dragon and secure it. For some reason decides to ult the Wukong, which isn't generally the greatest target, but better than not ulting anyone, I take it. We see HawHaw finding a huge cask on the Gragas to secure a winning fight, and I think ultimately the idea was right, making the correct macro decision, splitting from their team, finding a flank, and if the execution was just a little bit better from Anorthosis, that would have been such a big fight, potentially a game-winning one. Riddle was able to fight back, and even though they lost the dragon, now have a small gold lead for themselves.
It's one of those fights where it's a minor difference either way could have been game-breaking, right? We saw iLevi not get a reset on his ultimate because Kibah healed as he was mid-air. We saw Jinjo survive with stopwatch on 1 HP and then still managed to put out another few hundred damage after the fight had looked like it was about to end. We saw the engage from HawHaw and then the lack of follow-up. If Spooky had his Cataclysm there, how much would that have changed the fight, you know? It's so close between these two teams and so close in this group as well. We saw them both battle against SK Prime. We see obviously Go out in the lead. We can kind of assume that they are already in the quarterfinals, but Anorthosis Famagusta, Riddle, and SK Gaming Prime fighting for that last spot in our top 8 in our best of 5 stage. And it's basically neck and neck. 1,000 gold between them. 2 dragons to 1. A tower apiece. And a second item actually now complete. Proxer for Jinjo, Bloodthirst their second. No real surprises there. FireRain has gone for the Shadow Flame as well for a little bit more burst damage on that LeBlanc. And, at the moment, Riddle's carries are spiking a little bit harder than Anorthosis.
I think it's interesting to watch this game. I played a lot of solo queue this morning, and at this point, 22 minutes in the game, I think there was around 30 to 40 kills in basically every single game I played. Something that a lot of us can relate to. I'm sure many games would even have been over at that point. But now, in this one, 22 minutes, 12 kills, 1 turret for each team. This is a very slow game of League of Legends where there's a lot on the line for both teams. They're so afraid of making any mistakes, don't want to overstep, and now another dragon is coming up where I'm sure we're going to be able to see some action. if you're afraid of pushing forward, and in a game that is close like this one, we're often going to see situations where nothing really happens until the dragons come up. Sometimes one of them is going to want to even look for a Baron start, and now we're slowly going to see Riddle come out of base, set up the dragon area, and try to secure a better fight for themselves. Not that the previous one was bad, but what they need to do this time is make sure this Aphelios does not get flanked. This time there's also no stopwatch on Jinjo, so while he is going to have flash available, it could potentially be difficult for him to survive if he gets caught in a fight.
With 30 seconds left on the dragon, I expect to see both the teams trying to set up down towards that side. At the moment, it's Anorthosis, dearie me. They have the vision control. They've got the control ward. The Scuttle Crab did go over to Riddle though, so they have a couple of moments where they can use that extra movement speed. Banderas trying to fight Eyliph down towards this bottom side, but Eyliph has Nash's Riftmaker now in it. I kind of feel like we've gotten to the point where K'Sante can't deal with the Gwen in the pure 1v1 anymore. He's just there to like stand underneath the tower and catch the waves. Right now though, he's looking for something in the mid lane. TP coming in as well from Riddle as Banderas looks for a little bit more. Going forward towards HawHaw, who dashes away with the body slam. FireRain did TP in, used the home guards for a second, but Riddle now garnered control of the river. Didn't use a huge amount in terms of ultimates, but did use that teleport, of course, to try and get 5 players strong down towards this. Spooky going in, dashing out. FireRain lands the chains onto Eyliph. Banderas looking for the Q3 knockup, and Tofu strikes just wide. Winter 7 just dashing back into the pit. The relative safety next to a dragon can be scary at times as they do start it up. Riddle, Spooky getting jumped on by FireRain, tries to dash away. Levi looking for a little bit more, and they all dive in, and there's the Cataclysm, there's the kill. FireRain already down, and that's what the main carry really for Riddle has fallen. Eyliph now in a 1v4 off towards the bottom side of the fight. The Infernum coming out with the Moonlight Vigil, but it's HawHaw once again. The big man finds the body slam, but Banderas is standing in his way. Jinjo trying to get back into this fight as Winter 7's already killed off HawHaw. Banderas doing a lot of work as well. iLevi, no ultimate on him. Well, no one that he can execute right now as Winter 7 dives onto the backline, but Winter 7 will fall. Jungler down. For both teams, it's mid and jungle fallen. Dragon in the end, just secured by Riddle. iLevi looking for a little bit more. Does have that ultimate. Death could mark the spot, but he can't find his man. And in the end, Riddle win out on the fight because they got the dragon, I guess.
Well, pretty much. And once again, we can see Riddle not fully being able to, you know, start the fights the way they want. FireRain getting caught from the side while Jinjo and Winter 7 are already doing the dragon. And from this position, I have to say, it's really impressive that Riddle manages to come back. But we get a big engage onto Eyliph, who overextends the lure, and while HawHaw does find a big Gragas ult, it doesn't really mean much. Banderas stops the Jarvan combo and just buys so much time for his team. This is the power of having the K'Sante as the front line. Spooky and Eyliph, while being relatively tanky, and Jarvan and Gwen simply can't, you know, buy as much time, do the same thing for the team. And ultimately, even though Golden Toast tries his best to steal the dragon with Kai'Sa W, it goes over to Riddle.
I'd love to see that again, because I think the explosive cask knocks Jinjo along the longest part of the wall, and so he goes airborne, but he's not displaced because it can't knock him through the wall because it's such a long bit of terrain. So very, very fortunate for Jinjo that he was in that position. Very, very unlucky for Anorthosis Famagusta that they weren't able to catch out the AD carry, because obviously this Aphelios such a key part of how Riddle are playing the game now. Have a we're gonna see it again. So watch the cast here, because I think Jinjo is just by that riot flag and doesn't get knocked back. Yep, it would have knocked him into the wall. He stays still, and it gives Banderas the time to peel for his AD carry. Thank you, observers, by the way, very kind of you.
Jinjo puts on the sunglasses and types easy game in all chat. Holy, speaking of FireRain with the power of what? At damage coming out of this LeBlanc at this point. Finally, we're seeing Riddle being a little bit more confident in pushing the game forward. Also worth noting that there's barely any summoners available for Anorthosis at this point, while Jinjo and FireRain, the two most important targets for Riddle, do still have both of their flashes up. In other words, it's going to be very hard for Riddle to lose a fight at this point, and once they get the setup and start pushing in, they can start threatening tier 2s if they wish. I think most likely with the pace that we've seen this game and the safety from both sides, they're going to end up waiting for the dragon. We'll see. But I also don't think it's really only about him, because Riddle as a unit are just stronger. LeBlanc can constantly push out top lane, Jinjo can push out the mid lane, and they're always going to have first move. So Eyliph and Gwen can try to power through side lane all he wants. But if he's not able to all in and really go ham when fighting the K'Sante, it's going to be so difficult for him to do anything. And then we get to this scenario where the Gwen pick looks a bit useless, to be honest. We'll see. Now Eyliph is starting to push out bot lane. Riddle maybe even wanting to start the Baron. A little bit of a random time to do so with Drake spawning in 40 seconds, and I think that's what they just realized. There's no point leaving Gwen to push bot. They need to stop her from taking the tier 2 and just get ready to take Dragon.
I think Eyliph will be able to take this dragon, this tower though. Has now finished the Void Staff. So it's a 3-item Gwen. You can see Spooky working his way down towards this bottom side as well. A couple of wards do give Anorthosis Famagusta a little bit of vision. Eyliph, level 17, highest level in the game, alongside FireRain. iLevi's had a bit of a struggle on this Pyke, but can clear out both these wards. And get, like, the problem with Pyke always is how impactful you can be in later game team fights. The team has burst, the team has CC. Oh, okay, this is more what I expected to see. It seems like perhaps the Void Staff was what Eyliph was looking for. Forces Banderas away. Ghost now used. FireRain going in, but Gwen is immune, as per usual. Another chain coming out. Eyliph with the Ghost trying to get away from this one. FireRain dashing forward, pulled back. TP now as Banderas looks to join the fray. FireRain always taken out by Golden Toast, but Anorthosis Famagusta might be a little bit isolated here. Banderas can walk forward towards them. HawHaw doing a great job of keeping Banderas away from the rest of his team. Banderas just the thing with the Intoku strikes. He gets one. Cataclysm coming in as well. Moonlight Vigil from the Infernal Trigger is going to do a huge amount of work as Winter 7 looks towards that backline. Golden Toast will fall. Winter 7 does it all on the backline, takes 2. And meanwhile, K'Sante just doing K'Sante things. In the end, Riddle come out with a 5-for-1.
And what a crazy game from Banderas, doing so much work in all of these team fights on the K'Sante. I was actually a little bit worried for Riddle's sake at first, because FireRain went very aggressive to get the jump on Eyliph, and ended up going so far in that he had no escape because his flash wasn't available, there was no W's up. Riddle was able to follow eventually, and while FireRain died, once Riddle had the control, and especially once this K'Sante TP comes in, there's just nothing Anorthosis can do. Like, where are they really gonna run? There's an angry K'Sante on their back line. Aphelios is sitting safely behind Braum and Wukong, and it's just near impossible for them to fight back. We can even see Golden Toes having a hard time even walking up, being able to hit. And that is the power of the team comp that Riddle have built for themselves. Once they are all grouped and playing as a unit, if their positioning is on point, you're never going to be able to reach that Aphelios. Meanwhile, Kai'Sa can barely walk up, because if she does, there's a very, very strong Wukong and K'Sante jumping her, taking her down immediately.
Yeah, the power of the Wukong in these sorts of situations, not to be trifled with at all. Kempunk Chainsword now complete on him. And HawHaw obviously had to invest his ultimate to just try and keep Banderas off the Gwen in the last fight, but that's not what you want. You need the displacement, you need the CC to try and get Jinjo into your team. FireRain looking for a little bit of something here. Eyliph trying to snip his way through FireRain, couldn't find it. Skips and slashes away. Kibah pulled back. Bounties now available as there's a 5,000 gold lead on the Chem Soul for Riddle. They did take the Soul as we were watching that last replay. FireRain on a control ward here. Hasn't been spotted yet. Now will be. Baron started by Riddle, and Anorthosis Famagusta will realize this is perhaps their last hope of really finding anything. HawHaw knocked back with the Intoku strikes, locked up, CC'd in the air once again, and he doesn't have an opportunity to breathe, not an opportunity to move, and not an opportunity to win out this game. Riddle clean up 3-0. Good kill from iLevi, able to get one in response. FireRain dashing forward, Levi pulling him back. Banderas trading off towards the bottom side, dash in with the killer instinct. iLevi couldn't quite get the final coup. Banderas now going to chase out the Kai'Sa down towards this bottom side as Banderas.
Oh, Cassandra, what a champion.
He's such a champ, man. Everyone complains about Zeri, but this monstrosity continues to walk the rift.
Wow. Sunday really is something else. No one can stop Banderas at this point, and all in all, what we're seeing at the moment is really Anorthosis just having such a hard time fighting against Riddle. Riddle has a lead, they have an incredibly strong team fighting comp, and they can never reach Aphelios. You can see Jinjo this game, he's just walking up confidently, no one can ever access him. Obviously it did start with HawHaw kind of getting called out, he wasn't even able to burn his flash to live, but ultimately Anorthosis are going to have to find flanks. You are going to have to find a way to get onto this Aphelios, because if you don't, every fight is going to go this way. Very much including Cassandra going on an absolute rampage here at the end.
Banderas just doing Banderas things, it seems. Just need Shrek and Donkey and it'll be a perfect team for Riddle. Currently 20 kills to 9 up. 9,000 gold in the lead, and you can see Winter just tanking them for days. HawHaw called out once again, pops the stopwatch. Banderas pulled off towards iLevi, but really not too much Anorthosis Famagusta can do in this situation. Baron buff remains for a minute 40 seconds. FireRain pushing in the bottom lane. Meanwhile, the rest of Riddle grouped up towards mid to make sure that these inhibitors begin to fall. Spooky was off on a magical journey somewhere. I'm sure he had a reason for it, but I didn't really see. He was up towards where the Baron pit was. Now he's back. Not really like he could have helped defend these inhibitors. The last stand for Anorthosis Famagusta will be between their Nexus towers.
And keep your eyes on Jinjo. For them to have a chance to win, Jinjo has to be taken down in the Aphelios.
Yeah, but he's got red white.
Yeah, you can see his team just standing around him, covering him, making sure he's safe.
And that's it. You have to feel iLevi trying to do what he can, but he just can't do enough. Golden Toast dashing to the side as well, but Banderas even has a gargoyles to make sure that he will not fall. Riddle now 2-2 in the group.
And while this was the best early game really we've seen from Anorthosis so far, and in that sense you can say their plan was a success, it was just too high execution for them in the mid and late game. And with champions like Gwen, Pyke, Jarvan, you simply have to be on point, you have to be able to find flanks, be more aggressive, and because the game was so slow, none of the teams really wanting to do anything to push the game forward. It all came down to grouping and playing team fights. And when it came to that, Riddle showed us that not only was their comp superior, they were also always on the same page, and there was just really nothing the other side could do.
Yeah, I think compositionally it definitely favored Riddle. We'll have another look at some of these team fights. You cannot underestimate and underemphasize the power of Banderas in these fights. Just so often he kept so many players of Anorthosis Famagusta at bay.
Yeah, I think overall these fights were just so crazy to watch. Well, obviously this was, probably the closest fight of the game that could easily have gone to either side, but here we see Banderas just going on an absolute rampage, and he was such a big problem for Anorthosis this entire game. They just couldn't find a way to power through the front line, to power through the Cassandra. Here, obviously, in the next fight, we see FireRain getting caught on the side. Does that matter? Nope. The team fighting comp is way too strong, and there's just nothing you can really do. We see Banderas barely even being part of this fight. Of course, the Gragas ult, like you mentioned, on Jinjo didn't really work according to the plan because he didn't get knocked back. But even then, look at Jinjo, he's barely part of the fight. It's just Wukong and Kai'Sa rolling all over their opponents. Absolutely unkillable.
It's become such a difficult situation for Anorthosis Famagusta to ever really manage. And as much as, you don't want to say draft diff, it does feel like if they'd come into this game with a slightly more front to back, slightly more traditional draft, it would have been a little bit easier for them to work their way around some of these later game team fights, or even just mid-game team fights, because Riddle so quickly set up this dragon as a win con, got those first 2 Drakes by about the 12-minute mark, and then ever since then you knew that they were going to consistently force you to fight them 5v5 around the Baron. Here we saw what looked to be good at the start. Eyliph chased Banderas all the way back to base, but the collapse potential from Riddle and then the TP in from the K'Sante just spelt the end for Anorthosis Famagusta, at least in this game.
And I do think it's a shame that they decided to change up their style that heavily, because when we saw Anorthosis beat SK Gaming Prime on Tuesday, it wasn't by stomping the early game, it wasn't by having crazy playmaking. They were just able to play really well in the team fights, and that's where they were able to shine. Now, with that team comp, there wasn't really anything they could do. So for their next game later, this is where I'm hoping we can see some change. They need to adapt, they should be drafting, if not fully, the way that Riddle did, at least move a bit more in that direction, so they're able to, actually compete when the big team fights come around.
So if they do decide to switch things up for Riddle, of course, a very good start to the day, puts them at 2-2 in the group, and if they can manage to pick up a win against SK Prime, they're all but guaranteed the spot in the knockout stages in our best of 5s. Up next, I think we have Go versus SK Prime, so maybe Team Go will do them a favor as well by picking up that win. I believe as well, we are going to hear in a moment from one of the Riddle players. It's Banderas standing by. Banderas, I would just make sure that you are here with us. Excellent. Good to talk to you again, my dude. Huge win to start off the day. A huge win to start off the day for you. How did you prepare as a team coming into what could have been what could still be your final day in the EMEA Masters?
A lot more confident. For me, I'm kind of like a rookie, right? So I'm a lot less nervous today. Besides from that, just sharpening up on our play. Nothing more, nothing less. A little bit sad. I came into the interview thing and I heard you talk about they changing up their style. I really agree. I think one of their main strong points is HawHaw, never lucky. He's like the key player of the team, kind of. And when he gets put on Gragas duty, it's like they kind of lose their momentum thing. That lets them beat teams like SK, for example.
So last time we talked to you, it was after a loss, I believe. But this time, you and your team looked incredibly dominant. What do you think was the difference between the Riddle that we spoke about then and the Riddle now? Because this game, it looked like you guys were just on point from start to finish.
We kind of just played bad yesterday. So just expect a better showing today. Again, I think there was some nerfs yesterday. Oh, not yesterday, sorry. 2 days ago when we played. I think there was some nerfs, but should be better now. Style is pretty much the same. We're the same players, right? We just look to play our game, I guess. Nothing special.
I get that. Do you it feels very much like you have a dragon focus, like a lot of teams have had, over the last years. It's been bot lane meta for so long in League of Legends. Do you think that there's been any adaptations coming to 13.5 and 13.6 that change the way that you want to set up around dragons, or maybe you prioritize dragons less because they were ever so slightly nerfed? Or do you think you're still a team that really wants to play for these early dragon souls?
Yeah, we can play both styles. Like you have the style of taking Herald and closing out the game cleanly with a gold lead. Depends on the champions you play. But I think generally at the EMEA level, I think it's more secure just to take dragons early and play off that, because teams generally are not good enough. Like if we're talking like LCK macro and LPL macro, people are able to close out with the Herald lead, but usually you don't see
You
that
mean
from every team here,
LEC,
so...
LEC macro, right?
Oh, LEC, sorry,
Banderas?
sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
LEC, yeah, okay, cool. Good.
But yeah, it's true. I mean, it's more, you'll see more in this at this level that people will tend to go Drake, because people tend to do more mistakes here. So it's more the safe route, yeah, I should say.
I get that. Thank you very much for talking to us. We're going to let you go and start preparing for your next games. Anything you want to say before we round out the interview?
No, just look forward to a banger game versus SK. Whoever wins that is pretty much probably the team that goes to quarters. So it's going to be a banger game.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking as well. And obviously, you hope Team Go do you some favors by just continuing to win all of the games.
Yeah, I hope they keep stomping. I hope they don't try some new team comps today. Hopefully.
Well, we'll see if they can do you a favor. Thank you very much for talking to us, Banderas. I hope you have a great rest of your day and good luck in all of your games. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break before we come back with Team Go versus SK Gaming Prime. Don't you go anywhere.